All right, welcome everyone to the IAM webinar on mental health. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, and in observation of that, we are hosting this webinar for the community, represented by IAM here. Really, we have two broad objectives that will be achieved through the content we have for the next hour. The first objective is to destigmatize the topic of mental health. The second is to share out tips, resources, and perspective trends that our experts are seeing here today. And speaking of experts, how will we achieve those objectives? This session will be broken out into two parts. The first part is going to be focused on having our panel discussion, and I'll do some intros of them shortly. And then the second half is, okay, great, we've got all these luminaries on the call. So what? So as part of IAM, we have relationships with various community organizations, and we have a handful of them here today to represent some of the community resources that can be made available to you beyond today. So with that, I will start off by saying a quick introduction to myself and also IAM. And I will share my screen as I set that up. 1 second. All right, can you see my screen? Yep, great. So quick introduction to myself, Vineet Pandey. I'm a board member of IAM. By day, I'm a healthcare executive at Accenture. I'm a part of the health strategy consulting practice. By night, IAM board member, blog on anxietyasset.com. And I'm very thrilled to be a part of today's session and facilitating it. About IAM, for those that are unaware of the India Association of Minnesota, we've been around for 49 years, 50 next year. And really what IAM is all about is to be the umbrella organization to bring together the various walks of life that is represented the diversity in India here in Minnesota. What does that look like? We have 60,000 South Asians in Minnesota, which is 10,000 more than what the census was in 2010. So it's incredible, the diversity and the types of things that we can do. How do we achieve the sort of vision for IAM, bringing everyone together? We do that through our three pillars: culture, charity, and connections. I would argue, maybe selfishly, that this session today can achieve all three of those objectives, and really thrilled to do that. So with that little sort of background on IAM, you can check out, if you Google IAM Minnesota, you can learn more, and also on Facebook as well, to see what kind of events and whatnot are happening through our various partners and whatnot. So with that, let's just get straight into the panel. But before that, I want to make it a little interactive. Feel free to ping something in the chat to see what you think the answer to this question is. What part of the world reports the highest prevalence of common mental disorders globally? And I'll wait maybe 10 seconds to see if anyone can ping in the chat what they think. US, okay. North America, okay. Anyone else want to take one more guess? North America. Wow, okay. So this is a really good question that I posed, because it's actually South Asia. South Asian countries report the highest prevalence of common mental disorders globally. Let that sink in for a second, right? Depression, anxiety, almost a quarter of the population have those two, mental illnesses. So if that's happening abroad and back home for many of us, what does that look like here in the US? We are suffering in silence. While we as South Asians only seek out 5% of the amount of care from a mental health services perspective, as compared to 20% of the Caucasian population. So not only do we have more incidence and prevalence of mental illnesses, we also do not show up to get the care that's necessary to treat, to prevent, to really talk about at the very basic level this topic. And obviously you can see that I'm getting a little passionate about this. It's very passionate for me, and it's going to be very passionate for our panelists, who, let me introduce you to them. Our topic is Mental Health is Wealth, a Desi Guide, And today's panelists are Sumi Mukherjee. Why don't you wait for us, Sumi? He's an author and speaker, and also a friend of mine, who published his first book titled "A Life Interrupted: The Story of My Battle with Bullying and OCD" in 2011. Since then, he's published, and spoken on cultural diversity and social justice issues with a focus on racial equality, long-term impact of bullying, and a prevention of child sexual abuse. Next, we have Dr. Anu Chauhan, who is a psychiatrist focused on child and young adult population. She completed her residency in psych and a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry at the U of M. Last but not least, we have Nirja Singh, who is the clinical behavioral health director at the Department of Human Services, state of Minnesota. Nirja is duly licensed in mental health and substance use disorder treatment. She is leading the state's reform effort to integrate physical, mental, and chemical health to address inequities in quality to care. So these are our three great panelists. What I want to say is we're going to get into some questions to facilitate to some discussion, but think of the mindset of who we have here. We have someone in Sumi who's lives this day to day, who has lived this day to day. We have Dr. Anu Chauhan, who sees patients day to day, and then we have Nirja Singh, who is ultimately a state regulator, who sees broader trends. So we have a really unique opportunity to see what's actually happening, how are we dealing with it, and what's going on day to day. So with that, I'm going to start with the very most basic question for the panel. Any three of you can answer this one. What is mental health? I can pick on someone. I know you three can each have a really unique perspective on that. Maybe Dr. Chauhan, why don't you start?
Oh boy, that's a loaded gun. Are you talking about mental health as in like a disorder? Are we talking about mental health like in general, what it means to have like a good mental state of being?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I think, in general, I think, when we're talking about disorders in general, I mean, we all kind of have our shares of, sad feelings or anxious feelings or any of that. We don't really label them as disorders till they start affecting the quality of life. And that's when, we really call them like the disorders, so it could be, we might joke among our friends, oh, you got like OCD tendencies, or, or this kid is shy, or he or she is shy. But if it's impacting their everyday functioning, that they're not able to do things that they should be able to do and enjoy, then it becomes a problem. So I think mental health in general, when you're talking about it, being in a state of mind where you are happy, you are content, and, not affected by everyday stressors, and you can function. I mean, you will be still affected a little bit. I mean, I don't expect you or me to, feel happy if somebody's, being mean to us, but, we are able to overcome that and still it doesn't affect us. But when it starts affecting your the happiness or your enjoyability about life, or going to daily activities, your motivation, your drive, your oomph, then it becomes a disorder. I think so. There's different ways of looking at it. It could be your anxiety, depression. I mean, you can go on but the biggest issue that I see is, labeling it as a disorder is, when it starts impacting you, in your everyday functioning.
Sure. No, I love the sort of very easy to understand when it starts to make life not how you'd expect it to be. Sumi, Nirja, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I would like to.
So
go ahead, Sumi. I'll wait.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I would fully agree with everything that the doctor just said. Because I just turned 46. I had my 46th birthday on the 6th. So
happy birthday!
Thank you. About 6 days ago. But that also marks another anniversary for me. It marks 30 full years that I've lived with a mental illness that took hold of my life at the age of 16. And I think what the doctor said really, really hit home with me. It's exactly correct. When it starts to, everybody has sadness, everybody has some depression, some anxiety, especially when, there's COVID and there's a war going on and there's all kinds of things in our personal lives. I mean, a lot of that stuff is just there and it's a part of life. I mean, we all have that. The real distinction that was very well stated by the doctor is when it really takes over. And when it takes over your ability to live and your ability to enjoy and your ability to be productive and really truly affects your quality of life. Because so often, I think people don't understand really what we're talking about. Because I tell so many people that I have OCD and so many of them are like, oh yeah, I check my locks once in a while. I have OCD too. And it's just kind of like, it's nice on the one hand because they're trying to make me feel like I'm not alone. It's coming from a nice place to make me feel like I'm not by myself, and other people have this too. You're not so unusual, which is great. But it's also missing the point of what it really is to be acutely mentally ill, and to have that, and it really is truly a handicap and a disability that fortunately, I'm speaking 30 years after the fact now from when it started when I was just 16. So I'm in a much different place with it now where I've learned very painfully, very slowly how to deal with it. But it's very important to make that distinction of it's something that really takes over your life, and it's not just, a couple little feelings here and there that everybody has. It's quite a bit more chronic, and the symptoms are a lot more severe, and that's when you really have a mental disorder. And I think the question that you asked, Vineet, too, is like, what is mental health? Well, everybody talks about, my physical health, like we don't want COVID because it impacts our physical health. And like that, it's mental health is everything that's going on that we can't see with our eyes in here. And I think it's very tragic that I get passionate about it too. It's very tragic that gets so stigmatized, because there's absolutely no difference in my mind between one's taking care of one's physical well-being and one's mental well-being. So
Absolutely.
you can go ahead again. Sorry.
Yeah, Nirja, would you like to build on that as well?
Absolutely. I think Sumi just kind of touched the core. How these symptoms that Dr. Chauhan described are interfering in my ability to live a self-directed life. And that's where it becomes a disability. That what I want to do with my life and how I can achieve my full potential, these symptoms, these disorders are interfering. They are not letting me do that. I cannot be self-directed, and I cannot realize my full potential. That terrible sense of self-esteem that comes with a lot of mental health disorders is something that I would want us to always remember. And the only thing I would like to add is addiction care. Chemical health, so we have physical health, very less stigma. If I have blood cholesterol or a physical health symptom, I could go to the doctor and get treated. Yes, if I am feeling depressed, I am starting to feel that, this community will support. I could go and tell my doctor, for the last 6 months, I have been having these depressive thoughts, which are interfering in my work. I'm not able to sleep. I don't have same relationships, all that stuff. So I feel I can say that. But if I am struggling with addiction, or if I am on that path where I am using alcohol or any other chemicals, either to cope with my untreated mental illness, or it is like kind of becoming part and parcel of my being, there is a lot of stigma. There is a lot of stigma. I will not be comfortable even acknowledging within my own family that I'm having these issues. So I just want us to remember, when we are talking mental health, we are talking addiction care right at that time. And that's why State of Minnesota 4 years ago started calling it behavioral health. I know it's not like an ideal word, because we want to kind of think about mental health as mental health, not simply some behaviors. And maybe one day we'll coin a better term. But just remember that addiction care, substance use, is one of the major issues that we should be tackling as we are talking about mental health. Thanks, Vineet.
Nirja, no, I love that. I mean, having this dialogue even coaches the facilitator of this discussion to next time think about the question to be a little bigger and broader, because 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we may not have been talking about it, memorializing it that way, but we are needing to think that way. And I want to start to transition a little bit about maybe more, less so about mental health broadly, but mental health right now. I have two questions, and I'll give some context, but the questions are, again, for all three of you. Why is mental health such a hot topic? And can any of you talk to what you may be observing, either qualitatively or quantitatively, from the South Asian lens? And so why I'm asking this question is, and in fact, Mayo Clinic's Dr. Oldham published a study in 2021 that the invisible pandemic that has been running in parallel to the COVID-19 pandemic is on mental health, and maybe I would even characterize it as behavioral health, as Nirja was alluding to. So why is mental health such a hot topic right now? Why am I seeing so many apps talking about it, so many regulators talk about it, South Asian perspectives, anything that anyone wants to jump off of mute and share some perspective on?
I can go ahead, Dr. Chauhan.
I was going to say, Vineet, I was going to divide this question in two, because there's so much, and I think I want to kind of give people some data point, to kind of see what this pandemic has actually done and how the mental health, just the overall, the rates of these illnesses, how it's gone progressively, over the years gotten worse. So even before the pandemic, I mean, there were very concerning mental health trends. And I'm going to speak more from the adolescent population. I'm sorry. I mean, it applies to mostly the general population as well, but I'm going to, focus more on the teen health and, children. But with the pandemic, I think we saw, like, globally, like you mentioned, not just in the US, that we experienced high rates of mental illnesses like, anxiety, depression, and Nirja, like you said, substance use. And this was reported in many, many studies. Actually, I think in August of last year, JAMA, the journal that published a meta-analysis of about 29 studies, and the findings were so concerning. I'm just going to kind of, compare like what the rates were before. So the pre-pandemic rates, and I'm going to just focus on anxiety and depression, just simplify it. The rates for adolescent for anxiety were about 11%. And then the post-pandemic rates jumped to 20%. And then the pre-pandemic rates for depression were roughly listed around 12%. And then the post-pandemic numbers, they jumped to 25%. So, I mean, both rates of depression and anxiety alone, I mean, they doubled since the pandemic. So when you talk about, like, the prevalence, why it's being talked about, I mean, 1 in 4 youth would be experiencing increase in depressive symptoms, and about like 1 in 5, would be experiencing increase in anxiety. I mean, we saw like a huge number of kids, and adolescents with ER visits for mental health emergencies. I mean, the numbers that they're talking about, like, they went up in a year from, I think, July of 2020 to even like March of 2021 to like by 24%. So these are hugely alarming trends, to the point that I think for the first time, the US Surgeon General issued an advisory on youth mental health crisis, which is really, really significant. I mean, that has not happened before. So we're living in the times, I think the pandemic really, affected the teens. It affected all of us. I think it's been overwhelming for adults as well. But you have to understand, with teenagers, it brought so many changes to their lifestyle and the routines that they depended on. There was no normalcy, there was no routine, it was taken away. And then we had the uncertainties, the fear, no school, no prom, no graduation ceremony. I mean, they were basically robbed off of those, important milestones. So I think with the pandemic, we saw like this incredible sense of loss and grief. Everybody felt that, but the teenager population, they really, got affected. And there was this frustration, anger, worries. I mean, all of that. And I will speak to, to the fact that as a parent myself, it was a struggle to help kids navigate, these difficult times. and when we ourselves were not sure what the future would hold, right? So, and we saw that clinically too. I think it was everywhere, be it like primary care setting, the psychology, psychiatry services, ER visits, hospitalizations due to mental health crisis. I mean, that really, really went up. So, I mean, that's kind of the first part of the question. When you talk about like the South Asian community, I just feel the question I would ask is, how is mental health issues viewed by South Asian community, right? And what biases and stigmas do we have there to seek help? And that is an important question. I think it would be unfair to label the whole community as biased. But yes, there are those mental health stigmas in society in general, and our community is no different. So I think the biggest barrier to getting care for anybody is the lack of understanding about mental health issues. Like you said, what is mental health, in general, and then especially when it comes to mental health challenges faced by teenagers and adolescents. So, when you're talking about like the physical problem, you said the invisible mental health struggles, you can see the physical problem. Somebody has fractured, bone. You can see it. You can take them to the doctor and you can understand it and you can try to get them the help. But the mental health is difficult. Like, Sumi said, it's not visible. So what you are feeling, the other person cannot see. And, I think there's a lot of ways that these symptoms are manifested. So for a lot of people, they would have more somatic symptoms, like, my tummy hurts or my head hurts. They won't say, okay, I'm feeling anxious and that's why this is happening. So it's important to understand how these symptoms can present and getting them the help, as early as possible. I think in general, I think there could be tendency to like justify the symptoms, like, oh, you're feeling sad because X, Y, and Z happened, or, you're feeling anxious because you have a test tomorrow, or asking the questions like, why are you depressed? You've got everything going on, what is the reason for feeling sad, right? So when these questions are asked, it would make it difficult for anybody to talk about their problems. It's not going to make it easy. So I think, it's in general, I think the parents and in general as a society, we are missing those warning signs for people, the teenagers, and we need a lot of education, around it. Having said that, I think in my 20 plus years of practice, I am seeing a positive trend, towards recognizing mental health symptoms and seeking help, especially within our South Asian community, which was not there before. Agreed what you said, the rate of, seeking help is still low compared to, other population, but it's improving. It's not perfect, but I think we are moving in the right direction overall. And I think forums like these are important because they are providing the awareness and openly talking about mental health struggles faced by a community and hopefully guiding them to the resources that are available.
Absolutely. No, I think it's great to see some positive trends just around this type of forum. Nirja, I know you were looking to provide some perspective for this question.
Well, I just want to acknowledge what Dr. Chauhan just said, and also just want to add that the awareness regarding the personal, social, and financial implications of untreated mental health issues is raising. We never had a perfect healthcare system. We all know that. But what COVID did, it just exacerbated and demonstrated the huge cracks we had in our healthcare system as far as mental health and addiction care is concerned. So yes, it is a pandemic. The overdose death rates due to opioids is on the rise consistently and partially, again, a lot of factors that Dr. Chauhan just mentioned. Minnesota is unfortunately seeing a rise in opioid overdose deaths. I am very kind of sad to see that the level of utilization of mental health services for Medicaid patients remains the lowest for the South Asian communities. Not that they don't have mental health disorders, and they do, but the level of seeking help for Medicaid recipients in Minnesota is it's the lowest amongst all other racial ethnicities, which in itself is a very alarming thing that we need to look at. I know we'll be talking about some of the stuff that state is doing to to change this trend. So I'm not going to kind of take time here, but I just want to emphasize that the guilt and the shame associated in our community around mental health and addiction care needs to be taken care of. We have to acknowledge that, you know what, we cannot be these supermen, superwomen, super children, super people, this model minority, which in itself is a myth that stops us from showing our vulnerabilities and seeking help from the system when we really need it. That needs to be tackled. And forums like this, where we can come and we can acknowledge our vulnerability, where we can talk about our babies, like Dr. Chauhan just talked about, suffering from depression, from anxiety, our youth going in the direction of maybe addiction. And it's okay, and we will deal with it. But as a community, we really need to come forward and acknowledge that this exists in our community, that we have post-traumatic stress disorder associated with so many of our experiences of our parents back home and back here. But unless we acknowledge we need, and unless we just say that, yes, this is something we need to tackle as a community, we will be back here next year in the same month talking about the low utilization of mental health services among our community. Thanks.
Yeah, Nirja, I mean, for someone at your level in the state to be sharing these stats, I mean, it looks like you're actually looking at reports on your other screen, like you actually know the numbers of utilization. So it's not just something that we feel, we kind of think like, yeah, we probably, like, South Asian community doesn't use it. No, like, we have the statistics to support that. And super people, we may not be that. Nirja, while you have the proverbial mic, let's just keep it going with a question specific to you. You've been quoted frequently on the topic of our mental health crisis the last 2 years, specifically building on what Dr. Chauhan was talking to. What types of resources should our communities broadly expect to be rolled out in the near term from the state perspective?
So a couple of things I want to add, and there is a question from, I think, Shalini, what advice do you have for older generation? And I will touch that question
Sure.
as a resource. So a lot of us have, like, we are that sandwich generation when we are having our parents come here and we have our children to take care of. So our parents have their own mental health issues, which really needs to be addressed. However, language is a big barrier. Besides the shame and guilt and embarrassment, we do not have enough providers who speak the language that of Indian South Asian communities. So what state is rolling out, and I'm not going to say it's going to happen tomorrow, there are national class standards, culturally and linguistically appropriate service standards. It's called CLASS. Minnesota is one among the very first states in the country which is rolling out a program that will issue grants to mental health providers across the state. And it will also include disability, the physical disability providers across the state, to incorporate class standards in their work. So you know what, when our parents or our communities, when they are struggling and they are embarrassed to ask because they don't know the language, there will be services available in language they speak. And that will be a requirement on the part of the mental health providers to find those resources, and state is going to be issuing grants. That's one. Other is what COVID taught us in the world of mental health was telemedicine. And I'm sure Dr. Chauhan can talk a lot about it, but telemedicine really brought a lot of revolution in mental health provision in Minnesota. Our mental health providers for the first time were able to use telemedicine for the services they had never done. And again, the sad part is the older adults really did not utilize telemedicine during COVID. And that was due to technology. They were not comfortable with iPads or even audiovisual or even phones to talk about what is impacting. So the state will be focusing, as part of our work to enhance telemedicine in mental health, we will be focusing on older adults and making sure that we have more in-home support for our parents who are like either coming as first generational immigrants or coming and joining their families here, that they have that support in home. So they are not embarrassed of asking their children or grandchildren or neighbors or anyone, hey, I don't know how to use this iPad, or how do I even connect with somebody who speaks my language and I am like feeling this sadness or despair. So those are like two major areas that we are looking at. There is a culturally responsive mental health task force that the governor's office is putting together. I can put the link in here. If people are interested, please submit your applications. It's just closing. So that would be a perfect way to have our voices heard at the legislative level, because this mental health culturally responsive task force is going to be taking and picking on topics that impact all ethnic minorities, and we'll make sure that South Asians have a representation here. That's
That,
all for now.
that is really good, Nisha. Good information to have. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. The culturally appropriate aspect is something that is so needed, and I think it, at least from my personal experience, I think it could certainly transform the way that we access care. Maybe that 5% that I quoted earlier of how much South Asians access the system, maybe that starts to tick up a little bit more as we feel heard, and we're aware of and can kind of lean in on what's going on. So it's incredible the tireless work you must be doing. You're even you've got COVID right now, and you're still out here representing the state. So I know you're working hard. Sumi, I want to turn it to you for a kind of a related question. Kind of reflecting on your childhood experiences, struggling with bullying and OCD. Would you characterize our current state just broadly around, mental health and illness, like as we're taking a step forward or backwards since then, as far as what you're seeing, as far as what you're hearing from Nirja, what you're from your personal experiences and people you're talking to broadly in your day-to-day work?
That's a really interesting question. I've been thinking about that one too. I would say it's both. I think it's been a step forward, and I think it's also been a step back. A step forward in the sense that I think mental illness is finally getting the stage that the platform, I should say, that it's never had before. I think the pandemic certainly helped that in a sense, where now it's okay. I mean, people are talking about mental health. Like you said, it's everywhere now. You're hearing about it. That's great. That's great progress from when I was in middle school or high school and I was going through mental health issues. It was nothing like the level of, there's a sense of awareness, and there's a sense that it's okay. And in a larger scale, that's much, much bigger than it ever has been before. So that way it's good. I think it's a step back in the sense that, that's great, but how much is really changing? On the one hand, with like a lot of what I went through bullying as well. And that contributed in a big way to a lot of my anxiety and depression and PTSD and so on and so forth. And today there's a whole, I graduated high school, not to give my age, well, I said my age anyway. But I graduated high school in the class of 1995. And it's hard to think back then, there was no internet. There was no cell phones. There was no Facebook. There was no cyberbullying. That's one aspect of bullying that I never had to even contend with or you could even imagine, because there was no cyber world from which to cyberbully someone from. Now you can insult somebody and send it to 100 people very, very quickly. And that technology to be cruel was not there back in my day. So that way it's kind of, the technology has kind of opened the door to some negative things like that. And then also, I think in general, there's a lot of, the awareness is out there, but at times the people that can help the most, which especially if it's young people, oftentimes it's the parents that can help the most. I see a lot of issue with that, because I've given talks at schools all over the country, all over Minnesota in the last several years. Many times I give out these business cards that have my email on there as the guest speaker. And lots of times young people will email me and say that they're going through all these mental health issues. And the first thing I usually say is, well, you talk to your parents, because at some ages, 13, 14, 15, basically before 18, you kind of need a parent's guidance and help even to go see a mental health professional, to seek one out. And a lot of times I'm hearing that, oh, my parents don't believe me. My parents think, why don't I just snap out of it? My parents say, why don't I just cheer up? They say I'm making a fuss over nothing. I just don't want to do my work and my stuff that I need to do. And I'm just putting front that, oh, it's my mental health. Because they can't see it. It's not a broken bone where you can show an x-ray and say there's a cast here, this is a broken bone. So that's overwhelmingly been something that, and I've talked to these young people, and I've kind of been at a loss, because I've tried to talk to some of the parents and work with them, but sometimes it's really tough for these for younger people that are under 18, that if their parent is simply saying, just snap out of it, try harder, whether that's coming from a place of ignorance or what it's coming from, and the kids just kind of say, well, this is the way it is, and this is the way my life is, and it's just going to be this way. And I try to encourage them that, when you get older, you can make some choices on your own and stuff. And the same thing goes for even kids that are in therapy and stuff. Maybe the therapist recommends maybe trying some medicines, for mental health issues. And I take some meds every day. I've been taking them since 2005, and they really, really help. And some parents are just not willing to allow their kids to follow the advice of a mental health professional that is advising that maybe they take some medicine. Just like you have a physical problem, you take medicine, you get better. It should be the same thing, but it's not. Yep. And so that's where, yes, I see progress. Yes, I see a step forward. I also see a step back. And then I also kind of see the status quo sort of remaining that way. And I think we have to do more things like this to especially reach parents and caregivers of young people that maybe would seek help on their own, but they're being told, just snap out of it, cheer up, don't feel sad, focus on something else. Same with addiction, just get over it, just stop using. What's the big deal? The big deal is it's a disease. And I know a parent personally that whose adult daughter is a horrible, horrible alcoholic. And to this day, that parent still says, why can't she just get over it? Why can't she do better? And I keep reminding, it's a disease she's had since she was a teenager under your care, so it's kind of, but I see that we have to keep moving forward and keep doing forums like this one, so that we can, continue to slowly, if not slowly, bring that from 5% to 10% and keep trying to move in that direction, because 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, things can be better than they are today. And if we can achieve that, we've achieved something big.
Love it, Sumi. I can't believe it. We're getting close to the time where we're going to start to transition to the spotlights, but we have time for one question. Actually, it's probably a really good question for you, Dr. Chauhan, given you focus with the adolescent population. One question that I saw here is, what is the one common factor among youth that causes anxiety, more broadly mental health issues?
I wish I could just pinpoint there's one factor. I think the biggest, you have to understand, the anxiety symptoms, the onset and what age they start. So I think, when you're talking about just in general, anxiety as in like somebody describing the kid as being shy, or anxiety in social situations versus somebody who's constantly worrying, or panic attacks, completely different things. So anxiety is like a big umbrella that is used, but it could be so many underlying disorders, under it. I think I would talk about like more like the, if there is anything that I would say, I think it's acknowledging the anxiety symptoms and getting help earlier on is probably the most protective factor. So I work with kids, and most parents, when they come in with the kids, and it's usually in a crisis, they never come to see me, for smaller things. They've been either referred by school or by primary care, or some crisis in the ER that led them to see me. It's about how to help them function better. So I think a lot of it is about educating the kids and the parents what you can do, because there is no pill I can give them and lock them in a dungeon and expect them to dance happily for the rest of their life. It doesn't happen. There is no happy pill per se, but you have to work towards this. It's no different than somebody who has, like the mention was about, let's say, high blood pressure or high cholesterol. You would use medications, but we also recommend lifestyle changes. So, focusing on their routines, helping them with their sleep. So, getting them into therapy, learning the coping skills. All of those is important in addition to medication. So I think when we're talking about just anxiety in general, I see more like the protective factors would be supportive family, early access to mental health care, be it therapy or medications. And, the sooner we start, the better the results are. And studies have shown that. But there is no one factor that would per se cause the anxiety. I mean, usually there are triggers which can make things worse. But that is one thing that I would say starts really early on. I mean, even in childhood, like as young as elementary school, that you start noticing, even toddlers, you start noticing separation anxiety, but it doesn't become an issue. They're able to overcome that, developmentally and, function. But when it starts affecting, their everyday functioning and they are struggling to do things that they would enjoy normally, then it becomes a problem. So I think, I have not seen, I would not pick like one thing that has caused, anxiety, instances. Usually the triggers might be there, some big stressful event that can, they would talk about, oh, something this happened. And since then we have noticed, more of anxiety, but the symptoms of anxiety would have been there even before. They were not probably noticeable, but they just became more exacerbated by a stressor. I hope that makes sense what I'm explaining.
It totally does. And Dr. Chauhan, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's one example, but I think it should extend that every one of the mental illnesses that we may have heard of, whether it's on the radio or on Spotify, wherever you seek out, like, it's not just anxiety. It's very nuanced. It's not just depression. It's there's a lot of underlying underpinning concepts, points, and topics. And what better way to transition this is into going from the maybe more theoretical, the more practical aspects of this and some of the resources that we have in the community. So before we transition to the next part of the program, although I would love to keep talking and getting these experts' perspectives, I want to say first, thank you, Sumi, Dr. Chauhan, and Nirja for your time. We are now going to transition over to the community spotlights. And so let me just adjust the pins really quick. So I'm going to ask ASHA USA's representative Sayali Amaraporkar to get ready to share her perspective. And let me just set that up. I'm going to share my screen as well for that. Okay, there we go. And all right, great. I'm going to share my screen now. So just as context, we have 4 community spotlights. ASHA USA, Nami, Sewa, and Hello Friend. Each of them will really talk about for 2 minutes what are resources, who they are, what are resources they offer, and really help to take the discussion from a discussion to what you can do about it today, tomorrow, and in your future. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and hand it off to Sayali.
Thank you so much, Vineet. And this was a fabulous discussion. So thank you to all the 3 experts. And since you've given me only 2 minutes, I'm just going to start talking. So ASHA USA is a nonprofit organization which started in 2014. And in 2015, we started our Mental Health Matters initiative. And the main idea was similar to what you are just talking about, is to fight the stigma about mental health and create awareness about various issues, especially within our South Asian community, and encourage them to seek help. So as a part of it, since 2015 to today, we have done a lot of different events. So before COVID, of course, it was in-person events. So we have done film festivals where we showed some films on different mental illnesses with the community members and had discussions. We have done focus group with youth and parents and experts, mental health experts. And a lot of the issues that the experts were talking about today have come out in those. And there's an extreme resistance in our community, especially the parent group, when we're talking about their kids' mental health needs. We have done panel discussions. We collaborate with Nami, National Alliance on Mental Illness, for their various activities, like we do the Nami walk every year. Now, on our website, we have mental health resources which are geared towards the South Asian community. So if you need more information, please visit our website. In addition to that, we have a number of webinar series, and during the COVID pandemic, they were online, so the videos are available. Again, we discuss different topics like depression, anxiety, mental well-being, and a lot of other aspects where we have experts come and talk, and there are question answers and things like that. Now, one thing I would like to mention, and since Dr. Singh just talked about the importance of mental health when it comes to seniors, we have a monthly senior group called HUM, which has been running since 2015. And we started with 7 seniors, and today it's more than 40 seniors. And what we do is we do monthly get-togethers, which has helped South Asian seniors who, as you mentioned, are parents who are visiting or people who have been here for like more than 40 years and are now retired. But especially during our Minnesota winters, they look forward to these monthly meetings where they do potluck, they play games, they sing songs, they celebrate birthdays and special occasions, and have become good friends. So, and their kids tell us about how important this event is for them to look forward to, and it helps them to deal with their isolation. Then we also have a parenting podcast where we also talk about different aspects, but kids' mental health is also covered. And we also have recently, last year, we started what do you call it? A blog, which showcases Desi stories. And in that also, we see a lot of resilience, examples of resilience and how people have dealt with different aspects of mental health. Can you go to the next slide? I'm just running through it. There are so many more things I can share. So one resource that I will leave everyone with is one thing we have noticed as people hesitate to seek therapy or help is because they don't find South Asian therapists, which is very important for the therapist to know what culture you're coming from. So here's a website. If you're looking for a South Asian therapist in your area, you can go to southasiantherapists.org, and there you can use a search feature to put in what kind of problem or what kind of area you're looking for, what kind of therapist, and you'll get all this information where you can select. So make sure you make use of that resource. And if you have any question, feel free to email me at ashausa2014@gmail.com or on our website. So thank you.
Thank you so much for just getting through that super quickly. One reflection, really quick, is the cultural specific aspects that Nirja was talking about earlier, and how, really you're taking a bottom-up approach by offering these resources, which is fantastic. And now with the state and the introduction of the class standards and all that is going to be taking the top-down approach, where it's not, I need to kind of hack identifying those mental health therapists that are of that South Asian background. That cultural specific care is going to become the standard in the future. I hope that future soon, but of course, there in the absence of that right now, this is an amazing resource that ASHA USA has, and I'm so thrilled that you were able to share that. Let's turn it over to the next organization, which is Hello Friend. Avik Garg, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pandey, for putting on this amazing event, and to the rest of the IAM for letting me speak here. My name is Avik Garg, and I'm a junior at Eden Prairie High School. And I'm here to speak on behalf of a nonprofit that I started last year Hello, friend. As Dr. Shohan explained, COVID has been a really tough time for people with mental illness and teens with mental illness in particular. Teens have been dealing with unusual isolation and turbulent times, which has led to a spike in depression and suicides. I myself lost a classmate to suicide last year. And so, Hello Friend aims to solve this problem in 3 ways. First, providing resources. Fortunately, resources for mental illness already exist in many ways. I have been fortunate enough to talk to counselors in many different school districts, and by and large, there are a variety of different resources available. However, these resources are not uniform across school districts, and with COVID in particular, it's important that schools aim for the standard of a specialized mental health professional on campus, which is something that not all schools have. Moreover, even when these resources exist, it's difficult for kids to connect to these resources. That brings me to Hello Friend's second goal, raising awareness. Talking to a psychiatrist from our very own South Asian community, Aditi Garg, who specializes in working with children at Alina Health, I discovered that children are very unlikely to initiate the process of getting treatment. And this is something, again, Dr. Shohan touched on earlier. And that even when parents get involved, stigma and cultural differences often get in the way. By educating kids and parents about the ease of obtaining medical help and deflating myths about effects on future career outcomes, these barriers can be slowly overcome. Finally, Hello Friend aims to pursue legislative advocacy in order to secure funding and attention for bringing more resources to schools, especially in underserved districts. I have been fortunate enough to talk to State Senator Steve Sodzinski and have discussed with some people at Nami, an organization that will be speaking later tonight, about the possibility of passing legislation. I see that I'm running out of time, but if you are interested in learning more, please follow at HelloFriendMN on either Instagram or Facebook, or visit our website at www.hellofriendmn.com. Thank you.
Avik, thank you so much for that wonderful, quick summary of what you guys do. Sort of existentially speaking, you are a role model citizen as a high schooler starting this up. And I think you are showing up in just an amazing forum. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you. You're the one who gives the platform for people like me to do this.
Awesome. Let's see who's next. We have Nami, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Now, unfortunately, Thanedra was unable to make it as she just had a sinus infection. So I need to do my best impression of Thanedra, which I don't think I will do very good justice. However, for those that are unaware, NAMI is actually a national, maybe even an international organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They're a nonprofit organization with chapters all across the country, really dedicated to improving the lives of children and adults with mental illnesses and their families. One differentiating sort of narrative to this resource is that they provide resources to the entire community, not just South Asian, which is the resources that have been offered today. So what I would want to call out here is some of the things that they do on the far right. They do education, they do support, advocacy, and events. One of the things that Thanedra did promise is a roster of culturally relevant therapists that are also located in Minnesota. They aren't specific to South Asian, but just broadly culturally appropriate care. So that's also a resource that she promised that she'll be sharing, and sneak peek to what we'll be sharing after this event is concluding. We'll also have that as an option for resources going forward. But if you are interested in contacting Thanedra, I encourage all of us on this call to do that and make sure she feels like she was here in spirit by reaching out to her at Director of Equity at NamiMN.org. Last but not least, we have Dr. Mishra, who is representing Seva. I'm going to pin him as well. Dr. Mishra.
Yes, am I on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank for inviting Seva. I want to thank Vineet, Suesh, Nami, and all the panelists and people involved. We talk a lot about the mental health is a wealth. Only problem I have is wealth is missing. It pays more to treat ear infection, pneumonia, cough and cold than treating people with mental health. It takes more time and funding is not available. I know more funding is coming. I'm going to talk only about Seva, but the responsibility, you said South Asians. Family does not accept the responsibility for themselves causing the problem. I want my child to be engineer, doctor, or scientist. They're being pushed too far. The reason South Asians are suffering, you look at the number of Japan, look at China, what's happening there. These children, including India, are studying 20, 18 hours, 20 hours a day, including the school. They break down. There's no help. Yes, people mention that this person has mental health. How about your own child? Do we accept that issue? Anyway, Seva, I don't have enough time. Seva was established in 2004. Now it has a permanent home at James Avenue. A lot of material is available if you go to the website, and we'll forward more. But in short, I'm going to talk today. Seva does hands-on mental health screening and issues very beautiful way. I should say beautifully. We talk, we ask, we raise awareness, we educate, we screen, we refer, provide counseling, and we treat. You can say how and where. We run a program, Senior Social, which is every Thursday, in which senior sing, dance, play, bingo, do whatever card, whatever they want to do. Right now, because of COVID, it is on Zoom. But they come and enjoy their time. They play chess, checker, carom board. But the bottom line in that is, how are you doing? And in that, you hear, well, my son is taking all my money. I didn't get any fund from India. My daughter didn't get married. I'm sad. I'm not feeling well. That is a flag. That is a big flag for that person to get isolated and get depressed, anxiety, and other things. Chai and chat. Women come, they tell their spouse has not been nice. He or she was so angry that almost hit me. There's a flag. Intervene, educate. That's the opportunity. We run men's circle every third Saturday, in which we do bring seniors. They learn how to cook. Well, they all half of them know how to cook, but we want to bring the younger generation with them to show them how to cook and learn. The motive in that is how they are dealing with head as a household. Is the lady head of the household? Women nowadays making more money than men do, and it's every culture. How they are handling, because they are not the sole bread provider in the family. They got demoted, basically, and how they're handling with that stress. Wife is working hard. She comes and they start cooking again. Her job, her work is 20 hours, well, 18 hours a day rather than just 8 hours. And somebody said about drug abuse. Well, husband or whoever spouse is not doing anything, going to the bar, getting some things, and getting mad. How is my dinner? Family has to accept the responsibility. Immigration issues. Somebody is a child brought them, they got in a fight. All of a sudden, child protection got involved. Husband, wife, and a child got separated. How to deal with it? Who's going to help them? So that becomes an issue. Suicide prevention. Seva has 24/7 crisis line for suicide prevention. Physical abuse. We do food delivery. We take food to the seniors. These seniors, they're not able to cook, they're weak, and they don't know what to do. We give food for 2 days, they cut in half and eat for 4 days. Who's helping them? That becomes an issue. We provide rides from clinic to the place they're living. During the drive, they tell their issue. There is the flag. We also run clinics. We run 3 clinics. One clinic is every Monday, 12 o'clock to 6 in the evening, and 6 in the evening because children can bring their parents to be seen. A lot of families are immigrants, seniors are here. They came with all the bells and whistles, and all of a sudden coming to America, they are put in an apartment where nobody cares about them. And they are lonely. They need help. That's a flag. We run the clinic every Monday at the James Avenue, which is our central office. I invite all of you to come there and visit us. Then we run the clinic at Gurdwara every second Sunday. We screen people there, invite them to come and talk privately. We also do the clinic at Hindu Temple at 4th Sunday. We invite people to talk. And mental health issue, the most important thing is to talk to them and find out where they need help. Just saying that we got funding, we got this resource, that resource does not work unless a human connection is developed, and that's what Seva does. We use, obviously, very generously our referral. Nirja Singh is, for example, is there. We use 4 other psychologists, but I don't have permission to share the name. I can share it privately with Vineet and Suresh if you wish to. We provide legal help. Now, just immigration issue, one guy is getting kicked out because he's getting reported. He has a visa only to work. He's getting reported that he has abused somebody. Now that person is in trouble. So we provide legal help also. I just sent you, I don't know if you got a chance, in Canada, universities are giving new students first aid kit for mental health. We are behind. We have to catch up. We have to recognize ourselves, not push the kids, help them out, and support them. Thank you very much. Any question, you can always get hold of me, Dr. Mishra at seva@aifw.org. You can call me 612-422-3278. You can call Dashrath, you can call anyone, and you're very welcome to visit and talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. And 2 minutes is certainly not enough to encapsulate everything that Seva does. And so thank you for your Seva for this community here in the state of Minnesota. I really appreciate your time tonight. Suyash, would you like to wrap us up?
Yeah, thanks, Vineet. Hello all. I'm just starting to lose my voice, so please bear with me. I just want to start by thanking to all the panelists and the community spotlights. Such amazing work being done in the community. Really great to see that. And thanks, Vineet, for being such a big advocate for mental health at IAM and facilitating this panel so wonderfully today. It was very insightful and a great discussion. And personally, it was an eye-opener for me on so many levels. So I hope we can continue the good work. And so what's next? The recording and resources posted in the chat and during our session today will be posted on the IAM website, and also look for a follow-up email with all the links and a feedback form. So, we can only progress further and improve. That will be great help to us. And that's not it. Today's panel was the first step. So first of all, I would like to applaud you all for showing up. Showing up is the first step, and it's always usually the hardest step. At least for me, I've been a person, for me, I have been hesitant in so many places to show up. But once you start showing up, things start clicking, things start moving forward. So thank you for that to all the attendees. And here at IAM, we look forward to advancing this mental health agenda by continuing to bring our community together, and also initiate having quarterly tips in our newsletter from our community partners you've heard from today. And I also see some great suggestions in the chat. Let's work together to help the community and make a difference. Again, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Stay dry.
You too.